Right. Recording started.
I called order at 6:32. Roll call. Dan McGinnis. Who else is here? Jeremy Spitz and Karen Spitz and staff Nate. The minutes from April 30th. We got a copy. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Get a second?
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. New business, Farmington River Watershed Association.
So that was actually an error.
Okay.
I discussed that at the last meeting. That was a request for a letter of support from the Farmington River Watershed Association. They're looking to expand, do some work in the Still River watershed. And so commission, authorized me to write a letter of support, and I did that, but no needed to discuss that right now. I do have an item of new business to add. And we have applicants there, but we have for the Torrington Fair Plaza, so that's the Walmart Plaza, a conservation easement that the commission has approved prior activity there related to this easement. There's a new bank pad that's going in that most recently
Is that what you're adding?
Yeah, so it's just an item regarding approval for work to be done within the conservation easement at Torrington Fair.
These two gentlemen.
And they're there to represent
Okay.
them.
Let's see what they got to say.
I think you have to add it by
Add it by
a vote.
2/3.
Yeah.
Can we add this under new business?
Yes.
Get a vote? Good motion to add? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, if you guys want to present, I don't know, did you want me to bring something up on the screen? I do have I could bring the map up from GIS if that's, you have a plan, right?
I have plans. I didn't send you any digital copies, unfortunately.
Okay,
For the record, Kenneth Ricca, professional engineer and licensed land surveyor, and with me is George Logan, professional wetland scientist. To talk about, I'll do the explaining of what we're hoping to do, and George will give you the background of the wetlands and why it's feasible for us. So I'm here tonight on behalf of the owners of Torrington Fair Shopping Plaza. And if you have,
better known as the Walmart.
that is the Walmart Plaza. And I do have a drawing that kind of shows for you folks. The latest plan that was approved by planning and zoning. There's some additions going on to the main plaza that are really of no concern for this commission, but the commission does have a conservation easement on the bottom half of the property, which contains quite a bit of wetlands that are shown with the little wetland symbols in through here.
Karen, I'm sharing a GIS map of the best interpretation of this. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yes.
All right, so to see this area here with the hashing, put the aerial over it, but this is this is Walmart in here.
Yep.
Here, I'll move it up so everyone can see it. And then this is the new location of the new bank pad, and then this area and hatching is the proposed, or this is the conservation.
Existing conservation easement. So back in 1999, I was working for a different owner here, and they proposed a bank pad on this site, and part of the approval from planning and zoning was to create a conservation easement for the rest of the property through here as a buffer that wouldn't be touched. And I have copies of that conservation easement that I brought with me, so that you can see that it is in the name of the city of Torrington, and it came to the Conservation Commission. So you folks have jurisdiction, basically. basically, over this conservation easement area. And recently, the owners have asked about visibility coming up East Main Street, because when the original plaza was constructed, they needed to widen East Main Street. So they widened and created that turnoff lane that as you're coming up East Main, you kind of curve in, you pull off out of the main street. And when they did that, they kind of pushed the grade into the site towards the conservation easement. And they provided drainage, and that actually shows up pretty well on the map. The state of Connecticut has a drainage easement that drains down into that hatched area that's onto the top. And there's an old farm road that runs in between the wetlands, and that's what separates the wetlands there. And there was actually a building just to the right of the cursor. Right there, there was that was a building pad at one point. That over time just kind of went by the wayside. Some fill was placed in there, and we did manage to get approval of a bank pad. New owners came along, couldn't market the bank, so they went to retail, couldn't market the retail. While they were marketing the retail, they were approached by a bank. And so we went back to the bank, and currently we have a planning and zoning approval for a bank pad here, and it's shown on this particular site plan. And so the owners are looking at this, and back in the early 1990s, part of the expansion was to plant a row of white pines on the fill section along the bank, and you can see them very clearly in that picture. And that was and then when they were planted, they were small. They've now grown to get very large and block any of the sight line coming up from the intersection. So the owner said, well, is there something we can do there?
What was the purpose of planting the white pine?
I wasn't part of that. I assume that was just a buffer area and part of their overall landscaping plan, because
Right.
if you go, they have landscaping all along the frontage.
I have to.
On
had to.
202, that was part of the deal.
I think also maybe because there was nothing there, but there was stuff closer to Torrington Street.
Right. Right, so it's kind of filled in over time. And when we grabbed the easement, if you look on page 3 of the easement, under the covenants, covenant number C specifically, or covenant D, 2D says, there shall be no removal or destruction of trees, shrubs, or other vegetation, no use of fertilizers, poisons, pesticides, herbicides, or biocides, no hunting or trapping, no grazing of domestic animals, no introduction of non-native plants and animals, and no disturbance or change in the natural habitat in any manner. There shall be no removal of dead trees and no pruning and thinning of live trees and brush unless necessary to maintain trails and access ways as part of this easement. So basically, I told the owners, you can't possibly do it because that covenant D specifically states you can't touch it. Now, the trees themselves are planted on the fill embankment from when they just widen the road. It's not a great soil, it's not a wetlands, and there's a pretty significant embankment along there. And you can see the grades clearly on the plan. What we've done is we've mapped that row of pine trees, and you have that isolated wetland pocket, and then the road, the old farm road, and a larger pocket that continues on throughout the site.
So this is the proposal.
This is the proposed and approved bank. You can see where right where they widened is kind of where they placed these. So they pushed a lot of material here and then just planted the embankment. Nothing special about it. However, because of the way they constructed this, the existing culvert that was there for the farm road acts as a limiting device and allows water to back up into the upper bay of that wetland, which acts as a wetland forebay or a watercourse forebay that any silt, debris, whatever comes off of the highway goes into there and gets trapped. because the outlet pipe that leads it to the wetland that's adjacent to it underneath that old farm road is higher in elevation than the base of the wetlands here. So it's a catchment, it stills the velocity of the water coming out, and it's very effective. So what we'd like to do is remove the pine trees, which are now totally overgrown and are full of invasives, and George will talk to you about what he's seen on the site when he did his survey of this area, but there's a lot of invasive species all growing along this embankment here.
Is there invasive species elsewhere on the property?
Yes, there are. I had long conversations with Nate, and there is an area of white poplar trees that grow very quickly and multiply very quickly. And he said, well, Ken, you should take a look at that. That would be a perfect thing to eradicate if you can. So I went out and started to take a look, and I had my survey crew with me, and we surveyed the limit of the white poplar tree area, and it turns out to be a half an acre stand of these giant white poplars, and most of the area they occupy is wetlands. And at that point decided it's rather imprudent to try to go in there and fix that problem, because you totally destroy the wetlands with large equipment to get these trees out of here. There's some trees that are 24 inches in diameter in there now. They just grow very quickly. They break easily. They're really not a great species to have, but I'm definitely of the opinion that by trying to eradicate those, you will do more damage than good, trying to get rid of those because of the size of the equipment that has to go in there to deal with the trees that you're taking down. So we took that off the table and came up with a plan to remediate the embankment, and that's where George comes in. There's 10 white pines along the embankment, other invasive species mixed in, and we've created a specific plan to cut those white pines. These stumps will stay in place because they're helping to hold the embankment together. So we will not be removing stumps or excavating, but just cutting the trees, removing them, and then replanting. And George, you can take over from here.
So my name is George Logan, as you heard. I am a professional wetland scientist and also a certified senior ecologist through the Zoological Society of America and also wildlife biologist. So I looked at this back in 2022, and then I looked at it an hour ago. The invasive species obviously are worse now than they were before. You have the usual suspects. I think the worst one probably is the Asiatic bittersweet. Started climb all over the place. I did notice a little bit of a patch of mugwort here, which concerns me. That's the first time that I saw it. There is Bartlett pear, which has another name too, which is just put on the list this year. And
That's the state prohibited list.
it's not a Bartlett. No, it's stinks actually.
To the point they're all over town.
When you drive and it's early spring and you see these white flowered trees all over town, that's all Bartlett or Callery.
Is there a Bartlett pear that you buy in the store?
Well, no, there is Bartlett. You're thinking Callery pear, right? Or isn't Bartlett? Bartlett is the horticultural one. Yeah, is the fruit tree.
Can't sell it, but it has another name.
Yeah. Callery
It
and
is
Bradford pear.
Bradford. That's
Thank
it.
Bartlett. I got pear. Anyway, so there's that. There's Morris honeysuckle. There's a little bit of multiflora rose in the bottom. I did see some glossy buckthorn today for the first time. And then they have spindle tree, which is on the watch list. It's not on the list yet, but it's on a watch list. You see that more in the south than you see it up here. It's called the common spindle, and it's a euonymus species. And it's in the Celastraceae, which is the same as the Asiatic bittersweet. And of course, autumn olive. So the idea would be you take out these trees. Once those are taken out, you can mechanically remove any other invasive species that you can see at that time. Realization that.
Just in that area where the trees are? What would be the extent of the invasives removal?
To the bottom of, to the edge of the wetland.
And this wetland that we have on here is digitized,
Yeah.
so it looks like it's not quite accurate in that it's going up the slope.
It doesn't.
And I think it extends farther on the right-hand side of the picture where it kind of dips down and gets smaller. I think it extends farther towards.
Okay,
So
If
that
you- the
side
dark
is
side.
correct.
Yeah,
right.
But I think.
This side is down
that
here.
sticks up too far.
Okay,
I think the other side maybe even doesn't stick up far enough. I think the change in vegetation is basically that basin that gets inundated enough that it doesn't have a lot of
I
large
mean,
trees.
it's quite
around it.
obvious. You go to the bottom of the slope and then it's.
Karen, you can kind of see on this map here, it shows a little bit better. You can see how it's more oval in shape. And this is
Okay.
a steep slope here, so it kind of goes right down to
Right.
the water with no transition really.
So again, the idea would be once the trees are removed, then we go in and we tag. And what I would do is I would tag the invasives, usually is what I do. And one of the things that I put in here, which is also the plan, says that all work should be supervised by an ecologist or wetland scientist, including planting, seeding, marking, invasives, and removal. Pre-implementation meetings should take place at least 1 month prior to plan implementation between the ecologist, said contractor, and the landscaper at the city, and the city's staff at your discretion. So the idea is that you tag what you want to maintain and you tag what you don't want. Different tags. Say pink for removal or red for removal, green, blue for, because there are some, there's some maple that you want to save. There's a little bit of ash, at least for now, it's savable until it grows. So then the idea was, okay, we need to protect the wetland because obviously there's going to be some soil disturbance just by the activity that's taking place. So the idea would be to put a core log, the coconut fiber logs, they're usually about 15, 18 inches, they're solid. And so you stake them down and they're biodegradable. Over a number of years, they basically become part of the environment. And the idea that I had at this point is like, we're next to the wetland, let's do a little enhancement of the wetland. So what I propose is to, it's not a very large area, it's 150 feet max.
Yeah.
Something like that. So you can use some tubulings. I don't know if you're familiar with tubulings. They're basically cuttings from things that sprout, like willows, like dogwoods, and they're prepped. Basically, they're put in inoculum, and then you grow them in little tubes, and they're about yay big. And then you can more or less plant them in the core log, and they will sprout, spread, and then create a nice little buffer right there. And I don't know what the availability will be, but it'd be a willow species or dogwood species. Usually, it's what we like to see, because those are spreadable. The other thing that we recommended before I go to the planting list is wherever there's soil that's exposed, we're going to use a specialized seed mix, and that's one that we typically use. And I've included that there, and it's called the New England Erosion Control Restoration Mix for dry sites. It's a dry site. Has things like the things that will give you instant greenery, if you will, like some of the wild rice, annual ryegrass, the blue stem switchgrass, Indian grass, red fescue, and the like. So grasses for the most part. And those areas are going to be lightly covered with some weed-free straw, obviously, just light so that you can have germination. And then the plantings, the woody species that I recommended were obviously going to be dry spectrum species. So there's that little table down there. So we have 67 woodies altogether, and I expect that there will be things that we're going to also save. And by removing the invasives, we're basically fostering better growth for them. And so what I wanted to pick is some things of interest that have some color, fall, and also things that are clonal, which means they will spread. So from the nice part, we had 2 shadblows, so we can pick up a couple of spots with those. And then the other species, bayberry, that's clonal. Sweet fern, I would like to see a few patches of sweet fern. And then a northern bush honeysuckle, Dervilla. Those are low and they do spread. Sand cherry, because this is a sandy, droughty area, so that will also be nice. And then fragrant sumac. Years back, we couldn't plant fragrant sumac because it was on the threatened list. But apparently DOT started planting it lower, so it's no longer on the threatened list. So fragrant sumac is Rusa aromatica, and then gray dogwood, which is a wide spectrum species you can grow in moist areas, you can grow in dry areas too. And that's also clonal, so it will basically spread. So what you want to do is to encourage the clonal low bushes and medium bushes. And that should be your first defense against invasives. But the idea would be that you need to mechanically remove the invasives. And people say, how can you possibly do that? Some species are easy to remove mechanically and they don't resprout. By the way, white pines don't resprout. So we don't have an issue there from the roots that we're bringing back. At least I've never seen that white pine resprout.
Just gonna be mechanically, no chemicals.
No chemicals, no, it says no chemicals. So.
And that would be a problem for the easement in general
Yeah,
because
right.
it specifies
Plus
chemicals.
you have a wetland there, so
I have a question. You said it's threatened, so we can't plant it?
yes, you can now. They took it off
Back
the
then.
list.
But that
Because,
doesn't make
right,
sense. If it's
the-
threatened, wouldn't you want to plant more of it?
Good question, but the reason the DEP was giving to people not to plant or propagate species that were on the list as species of special concern is because it would potentially mess up with the genetics.
Okay.
So you're getting inbreeding narrow from one instead of allowing nature to take its course.
Yeah, whatever parent plant that was might have been from Pennsylvania or Ohio or
And then
something.
that's all you have.
Yeah.
That spreads and takes over the other genotypes. Yeah, so that was one idea, but it's off the list now. So, and it is a droughty species plant, which is why DOT was planting it on the hillsides next to highways.
You said the purpose for cutting this down was visibility.
That was the owner's desire, and that's what.
Visibility of what?
There's a bank, I'm assuming?
Excuse
The
me?
bank that's going in?
Yeah.
So they want like people coming up to see the
They
bank.
want to see the bank.
They want to see the
There's
bank.
nothing wrong with the intersection.
No,
Yeah, so-
No. It's a
There's
state of the
nothing wrong
no,
traffic
it's
light.
it's not a safety
No, I
thing.
see.
But, and in order to come up with a balance of, giving and getting, because they're getting visibility, but
Yeah.
we're trying to take care of a problem with the invasives growing here and start to put in
There's
something that's
invasive-
more
there's
natural.
invasives all over the back of the property.
There are.
Yeah, but for visibility, so, in terms of sight, things that are low to the ground is what blocking it. Tall is not really blocking it, right? So it's
The
like
white
within,
pines are basically blocking it all the way.
All the way.
Right.
Yeah, you can't see.
Well, this is
That's
this is the street view from 2022. And so you got to envision that this is where the bank pad's going to be,
Yeah.
right?
You want to be able to see the
So you can see, these are the pine trees. And this looks like, is that like some kind of hard pine here? I've been driving by it. It almost looks like one of those, I don't know what DOT was planting. They were like a sand pine or,
Austrian pine.
but it doesn't have the scotchy top. It's like some other, but anyway, it may be a non-native one, which, could be invasive control for that. But you can see the texture looks kind of different between these two. But these are all white pines over here.
why would all the other stuff that grows not block visibility? 5-10 years later?
Because a lot of these things are low to the ground. So
Yeah,
for
They'll be
instance,
farther down the bank, so they won't.
right,
reach it
so
above.
for instance, the bayberry, that can be a medium shrub that will be further down the bank.
Further down.
But northern bush honeysuckle, which really doesn't go above 2 or 3 feet, would be higher up.
And the willows are farther down where even if they grow tall, they're not.
Who
gonna
cares?
obstruct it.
So what caliper?
3 to 4 foot size and 2, there's not caliber. So they don't come in caliber because they're not trees.
And I wouldn't even recommend a larger caliper anyway. They're good for like install, in my opinion. They're good for getting a tree now in a spot, but they're not as healthy in the long term.
So these are a number 2 containers. They're about yay big. And so they're 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons. So their sizes that I'm specifying is 3 to 4 feet.
And I think all their forms are shrubby. So it would be difficult to caliper them probably anyway, right? Maybe the willows.
I mean, so if naturally, say, maples or any other species just grows up, I mean, is this something that they're gonna have to just then revisit 10 years down the road?
That's a
Or
good
is this-
question. So
Are they gonna be maintaining this?
there's always going to be some things that are going to probably grow up. And so the idea then would be, maybe when they get to a certain height or a certain density, that they can be culled, which means not removed, but just popped. And some trees do okay with that and some don't.
Yeah.
And some look really weird when you top them. But that'd be one idea.
So I'm just curious, Nate, since you have a forestry background, do you have an opinion on this?
I have a background in easements and forestry. I think so when I look at the easement itself, I'll answer your part of the question after that. When I look at the easement itself, I see that language about there are no removal of, the one that Ken brought up, where the last sentence was there shall be no removal of dead trees and no pruning or thinning of live trees and brush unless necessary to maintain trails and access ways. So I think my opinion is with like, when you have a situation like this where maybe you can do an ecological benefit in exchange for another service, you are technically violating the terms of the easement, even though the easement isn't a great easement. It's not super specific. So if you were going to if you did think that this was the best approach to do whatever plan that they recommend, I would try to have on the record that you're citing that, using more loosely interpreting the language, there should be no removal of dead trees or pruning or thinning of live trees unless necessary to maintain trees and access ways. If you just interpret it kind of like, well, this is for their access way to the bank, just so that you have something to point to rather than just saying, well, we think it's going to be better and we're kind of making up our own terms of the easement. That's my recommendation, just to have something to cite. As far as forestry, you are removing trees which are providing some value as mature trees that you're not going to be able to replicate otherwise. And I do agree
that would be my concern. I mean, and the trees are a buffer and they want to remove the buffer. So to me, you're sort of, the buffer is there for a reason.
I'm going back a number of years, but I'm pretty sure the trees were planted there to be a buffer and reduce the view from the road.
Right. And that's what I'm thinking. So now you're going against what the initial purpose of the trees was to begin with. And I mean, I live in this neighborhood, so I make that turn all the time. And it's kind of nice for me anyway, to have that buffer because, there's so much that has gone in over the years in this area. I mean, right. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of struggling with just, I see the good in what you're proposing, I guess I'm just speaking from a personal opinion is that, I like the buffer.
I like the idea of removing the invasives, but my feeling is the trees should stay.
I feel that way too.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me to remove them.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
So in my view, that's an ecological benefit. Yes, you might be losing a little bit from white pines because they're offering things that the vegetation we're offering are not exactly offering, but on a scale, it will be an ecological benefit. But the idea of the buffer is, the question is, what are you buffering?
It's a visual buffer so you don't see the place. Don't
So
see
you
them.
don't see the-
Exactly.
I think it would be like You're talking about the oblique view. So like,
So you
if the
can't-
bank's gonna go here while you're at this point here, you're gonna have a
Yeah,
buffer
and that's-
here.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's not meant, it's,
But
and I'm
the,
pretty certain it was meant, was put in there for that reason.
To create a visual buffer.
A little bit of background. I was the city planner when this was approved,
okay.
the shopping center. And I can't recall exactly. There was a lot going on with that site, but I'm pretty sure that was put in there for that reason.
Do you want me to try to look up the minutes?
I don't doubt even if there may be something in the
Try.
site plan. I don't know where the conditions were. It was a long list.
You know, my other thought is also, you know, if we're sort of undecided, I'd like Christine to weigh in on it too, you know, if that's an option.
Is the bank that's going in, is their lease or whatever agreement they have determinant on whether the view gets opened up? Or is this just something they want to
I
do?
don't believe so, but I can't say for that I'm 100% sure of that.
I see this, there's benefits, sure. But there's also, I don't want to see any more development on the 202.
Eventually, these trees will need to be thinned out.
They'll die, that's fine,
So the bittersweet will take them out probably
Probably.
before that happens.
possibly. Yeah.
That'll drop them
I'll
down.
have to see what the, something else may grow up in this place. And bittersweet's gonna come back anyway. It has a tendency to spread.
They do.
No, it's,
Same here.
yeah. So it just doesn't make any sense to me.
What's the extent of the maintenance associated with it? Like, is what you're proposing is just the installation of the plants, the final, like the setting of the site and the stage essentially? And is there any other interventions at that point? Would there be like within the plan that would address some of those concerns? Because I think that I agree that I think that if you disturb the site a bunch and even if you put a bunch of trees in, it doesn't mean that the bittersweet won't just,
Right,
find
so
that stuff
the-
up.
I mean, obviously, as you know, getting rid of bittersweet without chemicals is not feasible in most cases, and that's why this is a dense planting with clonal species that would shade out. But even though I didn't put this in here, I would usually recommend at least 2 years of monitoring and culling out the invasives until things grow to a greater stature. And that's typically what we do with mitigation and restoration plans.
You know, my limited experience with removing invasives is it's removed in this small area and then over time they just come back anyway, you know, it's unless you're really gonna remove invasives from the entire area, then I don't know that that's really gonna, I guess it's not exciting me that you're gonna remove invasives. I'm
Well,
sorry.
The reason that I put some of these plants in here that are clonal and you put them in, become thickets. In my experience, invasives don't do very well under them. Unless, you have to cull things for a couple of years until there's enough of a stature there and density of foliage. But I don't have Asiatic bittersweet in my woods, thankfully. I got them at the edge of my woods.
What's the spacing that roughly, does that come out as like a tighter spacing than a like 5 foot spacing? Because that,
Yeah.
were they around 5 foot?
5 to 6 feet
Okay.
on the center.
Which is a pretty tight, that's like a shrub spacing,
Right.
which is,
And so what I did, so it's 3,000 square feet. So I took a little bit of the core log out, which is gonna have the willows, so I don't have to worry about that. And then, so it got me a little less space. And then I just did, PR squared, figured out what the distance is, and it gave me a number. And that's the number for me to get them within 5 to 6 feet of each other.
So it seems like there's two reasons this could be here. One is to protect the water and, you know, have vegetation there to prevent runoff and just be a ecological buffer. The other reason is to protect the people from seeing the lovely, you know, Walmart Plaza. With regards to the ecological reason, Nate, do you see any difference, say, 2 years down the road, once they complete this project? If there would be any negative, you know, is it a balance? Like, yeah, we lost some eastern pine that might have benefits, but they planted other things that have a benefit. So overall, it's a wash and it's still protecting the water from runoff and all that. Like, is that issue fine? And now we're more talking about the public wanting a visual buffer from Walmart?
My opinion on this is that I think that increasing the diversity of plant species there, planting them in a way that reduces the need to have maintenance in the future are good concepts to design it in a way that I think that would be improvement if it works. I mean, they are clonal species. I've seen them take off, but it is a kind of, in my experience, it's kind of a normal spacing. It's not like an ultra dense planting. So, I mean, you could ask for more plantings to try to, you know, account for some attrition of some of the dead plants and all that.
Yeah, so issue number one, ecologically, you think it'll be either a wash or a benefit to do the project?
I think it's hard to know for sure, right? Like there's a shrub structure there that clearly some wildlife is using, like birds like caterpillars and insects that require native host plants are not benefiting from things like multiflora rose as much, and honeysuckle and whatever's in there, buckthorn, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, more different, you're going to increase diversity on the site probably in that case.
Yeah.
I think the large trees by the road, the buffer function seems to be the primary function in my opinion. I mean, they're really close to the road, so their value as like a snag tree where like owls would live or something like that is probably lower because of East Main Street, such a hot traffic spot. My biggest thought, and this is just from when I used to do conservation easements, is that the language in the easement seems to be prohibiting this. So at the very least, you know, you should interpret it in a way that if you do approve it, you should make sure you have some kind of interpretation on the record that uses the language in the easement.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I know.
Well, I think we should think about what the intent of the easement is then, right? And maybe not focus on the language, but what was the intent?
Intent was.
I mean,
around it.
It feels like there's the two reasons, ecologically and then also just visually. It's nice having forest around, and there's I mean, I remember growing up as a kid when both the Stop and Shop Plaza. I mean, I remember forest and it was nice, but then on the other hand, you don't want to stifle business and overstep your bounds with government. But for the visual reason, I'm wondering does this whole thing have to be taken down, or when they come up here, you know, just this corner can be taken down where they can still see the bank and it's not hidden, yet you don't have to totally get rid of the forest.
Well, you can certainly take 1, 2, 3, 4, say,
Yeah.
and still do the plan, maybe even increase the density of vegetation, so you get a little bang for the buck.
Yeah.
Good.
And then what happens is, if, say, I'm thinking off the top of my head, and forgive me, the visibility to Walmart will be through the parking lot, not through the building. Right? So the building itself is a buffer to the rest.
Mm-hmm.
It has its own whatever aesthetics or not. So maybe, you know, deciding to cut a corner out and leave these in might be a good compromise. I don't know. That's just one thought. What do you think?
I think only time would tell on that. I mean, it could be a big benefit and you look at it and go, maybe we should do that, more of that, or maybe it was a mistake. I just don't have a clear picture of what's going to happen 10 years from now.
You know, I was waiting coming into the meeting. What is it? What's the whole intent here?
They're putting it.
Yeah, it's a conservation easement that's held by the city and overseen by the Conservation Commission. So they're proposing an activity that would be within the conservation easement area, and they need approval from the commission to, based on the language of the conservation easement, to do what they're proposing.
Could I think people want to think about it some more, and I know Karen mentioned that she wanted Christine to be involved. So I'm going to suggest we table it. We don't have to make a decision right away, do we? No.
I mean, this is, you know, it's up to you.
Is it holding up anything if we
No,
wait another month?
That's not.
The last piece I'll say, just to close the loop on this, Karen was asking about like the intent of the easement. And so I just perused the whereas clauses in the beginning of the easement. And it does make mention of, I think, where did I just see that? It's not super specific about the pine trees specific, here to determine that would be in the public interest. Okay, whereas the grantee acting through its planning and zoning commission has determined that it would be in the public interest to retain, maintain, and conserve the conservation easement in its present state to protect the conservation values and maintenance of said property of the grantor. It's all really general. And then there was one term I thought I saw that was, oh yeah, whereas the conservation easement area possesses significant ecological, scientific, educational, aesthetic, agricultural, historic, and recreational values. So that's the only time that it's mentioned in the actual easement.
Take a look. I don't know if you can look it up, but look there when this was approved, it was one of those restricted
RC, yeah.
RCs, restricted commercial zones, and there were a bunch of conditions attached to the approval. And I have no idea whether they were on file or where they are, but they were conditions.
Okay, I'll check that approval and I'll look for the minutes too and see if I can.
This is
I
the
don't-
easement line?
Yes,
I
So
doubt
that tree's
there's
not
much in
even
the minutes.
part of it, so you can take that tree down without even saying anything, right? I mean, assuming this is accurate.
yes.
Yeah, so in actuality, if there's 2 or possibly 3 trees that we're discussing for the compromise set, and if the bank's here and you're coming up, this is the start of the turnoff? Oh, back here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, and I'm assuming they're gonna have a sign.
Yeah, where
I
is
mean,
the
I-
approved sign on the site plan for that?
On
Do
the
you-
building.
It's on the build, they don't have a freestanding, or it's on the same pedestal as as all the other ones that on the plaza?
Yeah, I think the freestanding is inboard of the site.
I mean, I'm torn between my love of the forest, yet I also like limited government, and I don't like government overstepping their bounds, but in this case, and people coming up, yes, I understand the bank wants to be seen. But then there's also, if I was the bank owner, I mean, there's value to being kind of in the forest. So having a forest, you don't feel like you're in the middle of the Walmart plaza, parking lot, I hate that. Everyone hates that parking lot. It's not fun. No offense.
We're trying to make it better.
It's,
Yeah, no.
there's a whole nother proposal for it, so
Yeah,
I
no,
can,
I'm not saying,
If this all comes to fruition, you're gonna be much happier
yeah, that'd be
with
great.
that parking lot.
So, but, if I pulled into this bank to have a forest here, I think it's nicer, but then also I understand that they want to be seen. But personally, I feel like if we can come to some compromise, cutting off just the end like that, so they're seen, yet there's still a forest to block it. When you're coming up the hill, you don't feel like you're, the city. That'll be my opinion, but I'm kind of torn both ways, so I'm not super strong on that.
I like the idea of tabling it, but I also, agree somewhat with Jeremy on your thoughts too.
All right, can I get a motion to table?
Make a motion to table.
I say.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. For the
Well,
delay.
thanks for listening. No, I mean, that's it.
I know it's no fun.
It got out of the office.
Yeah. I know it's no fun not getting
All
an
these
answer.
mini copies?
yeah, sure,
With
that's
you?
fine. Yep.
And the stamped and sealed ones as well for your record.
Did the folks here want to take these for your consideration? Because I mean, it's ultimately, we have these on file already. So if you want to look at it further.
So I can leave you these 2.
The easement, I'll take a copy.
The easement, okay.
And what's the?
The rest is just for
You have-
context, so.
You have a copy here.
Okay.
Oh, you guys already have it.
All right, thank you.
Hand this to George. Yeah. And Karen, did you want me to send you a copy?
Sure.
Okay. I'll
Thank
send
you.
And I'll also provide you digital copies of all of this.
Perfect. I'll circulate that to all the commissioners then.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
See you later.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
What is the intent of the property, just to make it, I'm not, we don't want to add a bank.
Then when I had a bank.
Well,
Oh, like a bank.
so the bank is already approved. The signage for the bank is
They
already
want to
approved.
put it right on that spot there?
They want to clear the trees so you can see the bank and the
Oh, I
signage
got
better.
That's all it is.
They want exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But in the easement, I believe, or somewhere you mentioned the intent of those trees was to create a buffer, right?
I did mention aesthetic as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And.
So the bank's already been approved,
Yeah.
so we're just going through the preliminaries of,
Whether or not they intrude on the.
okay, got it.
Whether or not they can cut trees to make the view toward, and I made a note to myself, I'll bring the copy of their sign permits. Because they showed where the sign is, so we could probably get a better idea of where the sign is and where they're gonna be looking for exposure.
All right, let's move on. We have that. Beers for conservation. It was a bust. That was a lousy place to have it. Jeremy, why, I mean, Nate, why there?
So what happened was at the last meeting, we said we were gonna do it at Bad Dog.
Right.
Bad Dog wasn't open on the day that everyone agreed on, but during that meeting, everyone said Sawyer's or Bad Dog. And so
I don't remember saying Sawyer's.
someone
I
brought
thought
up
there was
Sawyer's and so that's why I said, okay, well, Bad Dog doesn't work. We have very short turnaround on this. So I did Sawyer's. We don't have to do it there ever again. I've had the same
There's no
experience doing
meetings.
meetings.
There was no meeting room. It was hard to talk. It was
Yeah,
loud.
it's just too loud.
It was hard to talk, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's not do that one. I think it was a decent idea. We had about 9 people, but don't do anything like that again.
Well, you mean,
At that location.
well, and I'll just take it whenever the commission wants to do something like that again, just let me know and I'll try to set it up.
Yeah, it was.
But I'll make a note of
Cindy
that.
from the Conservation District was there. She says they may do something, so I don't.
Oh, they may do another networking thing.
Yeah, they may do more. Yeah, no, they haven't done a networking thing like that. The Northwest Connecticut Land Conservancy, yeah, they got,
Yeah,
I keep thinking of Antonoc.
you're right. Formally, we.
Yeah, formerly Antonoc does those occasionally. Anyway, they're not a bad idea, especially for one, having just for one town. Okay, HVA crossing. What's going on?
So the last we left this, we did a training in, when was that training? February, March? No, it was in April. It was in April. It was the week, it was 2 weekends, I think, before the cleanup. And we, a bunch of folks came out, HVA, explained the protocol of doing these assessments. And so at this point, we didn't schedule a time to actually have the commission go out or coordinate other people going out. And so I guess it's an open item to see, do we want to schedule a visit and do it like a conservation, like one of the open space investigations? Do we want to have folks do it independently and report back and coordinate, like compile that information? I don't, I'm open to whatever folks want to do on this. But,
I would want to do it at least with one other person, not independently, personally.
I'm okay. I mean, I have all the data sheets and I have all the locations. So I guess what I could do is I could circulate those to everyone, and there's no real rush on this. There was no time of year that worked better than any other, because there's different sign of different animals using these crossings at different times of year. So it's really up to you all how what you think would be the best idea. Maybe having more than one person, maybe small groups.
Small, probably at least 2, I would
Okay.
think would be helpful.
A way to start small on this might be a couple people today volunteer to get together and do it and then report back to the commission and see how it went. That's one option.
Yeah, I'm just thinking going into the summer, it's like so many weekends are planned already. It's and obviously for me, I work Monday through Friday, so it's hard during the week. Or maybe, well, I could do it like in a like an early evening kind of a thing. 6, 7 PM on a weekday.
How long do you have to be out there?
What do you all think from the folks? I think you were all at the training, the three of you.
Oh, yeah, I was.
You weren't?
30 minutes to an hour, maybe?
Yeah, I don't think it would take more than an hour ever. It's really, I mean, I think it could be as quick as 15 minutes.
Once you got the hang of it, it'll probably be 15.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of like, is there a lot of traffic? Like low, is there?
Car traffic.
Yes, because it's assessing the road as a barrier and how different elements of the landscape are going to affect animals crossing the road.
So
there's
how
just-
many locations are we thinking we're gonna accomplish as a,
I believe, I don't have the map in front of me. Well, maybe I do. I mean,
Yeah, we all pretty much,
I mean, are we talking like 25 or 100, or I'm just trying to get a sense of
I'd say it's less than 10.
less than 10?
That's been a long, gotta be much more than 10, no?
Well, these were sites that were identified on a regional scale with the largest pieces of forest land and those like critical connections between them. So it was done with a computer at a 100,000 foot view, and these are just in their mind the top priorities to them, and they want to know if what they've done remotely, what it looks like in the field. So, because it's Torrington, there's a lot of stuff in the northern part. I'm sure there's more connections, but there's only a certain amount of ways that connect, say, Pognut with essentially over to the water company property. That's everything's kind of moving in that direction. And
we're
there's
all
only,
in Torrington.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They would have just, you send out a list of the sites?
Sure, definitely.
And whatever forms we would have to fill out?
Yep, I'll send a list of sites, and then she sent the data sheet already.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same as when we were on the, Yeah.
But she had sent digital versions to me, so I'll send the list and the sites, and then maybe you guys could either, I mean, you have all of each other's emails. You could either schedule something more informally by email, or we could take it to the next meeting and do it then.
We'll send it out, see what happens.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. Food forest planning?
So my thought on this was, how did that all go? Because it seemed like there was kind of some miscommunication or like slow communication from the conservation district. I thought we were all clear, and Cynthia kind of like responded to some people and not others, and I wasn't.
I think they were all.
Well, when I signed up for the blueberries, I thought they were coming on whatever Saturday, and then that didn't happen. So then I was a little confused after that.
Did you end up getting anything, Karen?
Well, no, but since, and actually I talked with Cynthia at the thing, that Sawyer's thing. So I'm away at the Cape this week, and then when I get back, I'm going to get in touch, and I'm just gonna, either they'll drop them off or pick them up. So I have to get back with her next week.
Yeah, I think Christine got hers, but I don't know for sure. You did get them? Okay. So I guess it's just, so let me write this down because I can kind of just close the loop on this. So Karen, delivery in progress, Christine, I think they were delivered. And then Jeremy received currents. And then we'll just see what's left for whoever and put it out there again, I guess.
Yeah. Somewhat in and out.
I think Christine said she would take whatever everyone else didn't take, so it may be just easier for everything else to just push her way.
The Red Mountain Trail Grant?
Oh, I have a comment about the food forest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I saw rhubarb was on the list, and I'm wondering if that might be not the best plant, seeing that it's toxic if you don't cook it. So, I don't know, in case somebody in the public comes and they, food forest, and they're picking berries, and then they pick some rhubarb and they don't know, and they
Jump on the spot.
and they, I mean, I don't know how toxic.
Right.
I don't either.
No, that's a good point.
the only part you can eat is the stem on the rhubarb.
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah.
my wife eats the stem, but
Raw?
raw, but
Oh,
it's the
okay.
leaves
It's the leaves that are toxic.
they're
Is
toxic.
it kill toxic or just upset stomach toxic?
Oh, well, good point.
I don't know. Either way, we probably don't want to.
Yeah, rhubarb.
Yeah.
It's nice to have, I guess, for
Yeah.
people making rhubarb pies and stuff, but,
And it's easy, and right, probably because it requires no maintenance. It'll just
Yeah.
it'll just take
It grows
over,
well,
you know,
yeah.
so. But I'll bring that up. Maybe she
Okay.
can find a replacement.
I mean, I'm not heavily opposed to it. I just wanted to bring it up as a concern in case nobody's thought of it. We don't want somebody eating it, getting sick, and then suing the town.
Yeah.
And then it comes back on us. Why did you plant something that's toxic leaves?
Yeah.
And, you know,
Good idea.
I mean, unless we put a sign there, but then somebody doesn't speak English, and I don't know.
Doesn't read the sign, doesn't care.
And I don't know if we're only going for native plants, but gooseberries, I have gooseberries and I love them. They're very easy to grow, very easy to propagate. They grow, well in this climate. But, just a thought.
Are they kind of white, clear?
The gooseberries, the ones I have, they're kind of, they start off as like a green and they kind of get slightly clear and then a red, like half
Yeah,
of it kind
yeah,
of turns
yeah.
red and it's slightly tart.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's sweet, it's about the size of a small grape.
You make jellies with it?
I just eat them right off the,
Okay.
there's not enough left once I get done with the bush.
Yeah, I'll ask her. I think that, I assume that the rhubarb was put because they were looking for like an herbaceous filler, like they have the shrub spacing and then the tree
Yeah.
spacing down, and it's probably, they were looking for to make it like a complicated sort of canopy. But they may have other stuff that they can put in there, like, I don't know, something ground cover like, because I think
Asparagus might be neat.
they
Another
talked,
perennial.
they talked about asparagus, but I think that they said they didn't have any. So it may be something where we don't do it this year, but then they mulch it and then the following year plant something as a ground cover. We can ask them to do that. My last piece with that food forest planning was that the commission had offered to try to like bring the community into the process. It looks like it's gonna be scheduled for the fall to do the planting, but to try to get the community interested. And one thing I've been promising to do is to draft a letter to the Bannon Street neighbors, which I have not done until now. So if you guys don't mind, I'll share it with you, Karen. Just like look at it. I'll also circulate it to everyone, but it's really short. If you have any comments.
Oh, it was there. I saw it.
Yeah, I know. Let me.
Briefly.
It went away.
Yeah, I know.
You can just read it because it's so short.
Yeah, I know. I didn't print it. What I'll do is I'll just circulate. We have a lot of time. I'll just circulate it to everyone, and then that'll give you time to look at it. Let me just
You
make
said
a
be
note.
involved, like help plant, help spread mulch.
Yeah, basically it's very
goals.
general, and I'm trying. I think the part that I'd like assistance on as well is how much information are we putting out here? We want to send it to like everyone in the neighborhood, so it probably shouldn't be too long. I wanted to have some of it in Spanish, but not like a complete translation, or maybe it should be
Should be a
complete translation. So this is the kind of thing. So I'll send you what I have. I have part of it in Spanish, part of it in English. I have an example with a QR code and an easy link to write down for another food forest in Austin, so that people can get an idea of what it could be or what the idea is. But I'll send it around to everyone, and you guys can all comment, and I'll just take it in and integrate it for the next meeting, and we can look at it there.
Thank you.
Are we still thinking about
Yeah.
doing the park over there, that we had walked,
No.
no?
What,
The one where,
the Bannon Street one?
we were gonna put it behind on the back right side of it.
That's
Remember we walked.
that's
it?
what this is. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's
'cause-
gonna still be there?
Right. That's the idea now, is it'll be there. We'll
Okay.
do it in the fall. There'll be signage that kind of permanent signage that explains the project, but leading up to it, we want to engage the,
I think it's
the
a
larger
great idea to
community.
engage the neighborhood. It's a good sized neighborhood there too.
Mhm.
Once we get it, I'm pretty sure I can get it translated. in Spanish.
Okay.
Pretty useful.
So I'll give it to it as it is and then make that as a comment. And then what I'll do is I'll just do it in English and then have,
Yeah.
You
can
know.
get some-
send, what's that? Bannon Street letter. That's all I had.
Anybody else?
Well,
Red Mountain?
Still, I mean, very basic stuff coming in on that. This has been like the slowest plan development. But, you know, working with our Public Works Department, who's retained SLR to do the plan, they've kind of sketched the route and they have profiles and some basic stuff. The wetlands are in there. They finalized the wetlands, but no actual, like, the design is about 50% complete. So they're still working on the design for this project. Originally, the way the grant was scoped, we were going to have, you know, the contractors starting breaking ground like now. So I don't think that's going to happen this summer based on how fast things are going, because it still has to go for RFP for the actual to get the site contractors. We're not even at that step yet. So so that's just, things have been the same there as they were really in January.
off the subject, just real quick, I overheard that the city was gonna give some property away to Eversource to build another solar farm. Have you heard anything about that?
So
And
that,
I don't mean to, maybe we could just table that and talk
Yeah,
about it next
Yeah,
time.
yeah, next
I
time.
just think it's ridiculous that we give property away and we don't get, we're not recipients of the electricity. It just was absolutely stupid. But anyway,
We're getting it then?
I don't,
Yeah, let's put that on,
Okay.
add that to the next agenda, because it's not on this one.
and just, yeah, I mean, I can look at that up. There's kind of two things with the city with power generation right now with solar. There's the landfill. You're talking about the landfill solar project.
Let them do the landfill, yeah.
The other project is not Eversource, it's a private company, and there was a access easement that was renegotiated over that property. But there was, to my knowledge, there's no property going from the city to
Okay,
Eversource.
oh, good, thank you.
Forest management plan?
I sent the grant application out for that. We should be hearing back in June as to whether or not we received the funds for that. So just in a holding pattern until we hear if we got that grant.
Okay. The open space inventory?
We all had a visit. That was really fun. Karen, we went to, it was a little strip along the Naugatuck River, pretty long, but like about 200 feet wide and maybe 1,500 feet long.
Wow.
So it was definitely a nice strip. It'll be a great trail connection if we can get access agreements and permission from the state to be able to kind of connect Midgeon Ave with Stillwater Pond State Park. That's where that would be. But the site was beautiful, not a lot of invasives,
Yeah.
big open floodplain, just really cool walk. But then the next thing would be to schedule another one. So is that something that folks, Christine's kind of taking the lead on scheduling these in the past?
Talk to Christine and see when she's gonna do it.
Do you want to punt this to the next meeting and then we'll have her schedule it? Or do you want me to do it via email and see if we can figure it out that way? Or set something up now?
So do it by emails, because that way Christine will get into it.
Okay. I'll,
If she likes to go on this.
all right. The next property I have to look at is is the Greenbrier subdivision.
Yes.
Did you go out on any sidewalks on that when that land was set aside, or?
Yeah, look, it's still fenced, so. Here,
Right.
Yeah.
Is it how
I didn't see much other than.
how
still
easily
fenced.
navigable is it in there? Is it,
I have no idea.
you know, okay. It may be a really tough site to access because it was kind of partially cleared and now has like recolonized probably with like shrub,
Yeah.
like,
Blackberries. Try walking through that.
yeah, right. Stuff of that
Before
cal,
roads, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll try and we'll see what happens, but that's what I have on the docket for the next, that property incidentally is up for sale again. We're getting a lot of calls about it. This was a about 30 acre property next to, if you know where Hasek Road is, do you know where that is? Any of you know? That's like by the Litchfield line, by the solar farm. So it's adjacent to there. There was a project that went in for a multifamily. It was denied in a kind of huge dramatic fashion. And now someone else is coming to take a crack at it in there. So, but yeah. So anyways, this is the property this was the conservation land set as the that was put as the set aside in the first round. They usually, the developer will give the land to the city after the subdivision is approved. In this case, they did it prior to the approval of the subdivision. So now when they come back for another subdivision application, they're gonna have to set aside more conservation land. Because I don't know why they did it up front. Good for
I don't know, I
conservation,
wasn't
but
there on that one.
yeah. Anyway, but long story short, it's about, I don't know, 7 acres. So fairly large for our standards.
Reschedule the June meeting, what's that?
Would folks be amenable to rescheduling the June meeting?
Sure. When,
I can do again this by email as well. And that way we can get Christine in, but I was thinking of it's set for Tuesday, the 25th. If we could do Tuesday, the 18th, or
18th, I'm going.
you're gone, how long are you gone through the whole week?
No, coming back. Tuesday, 19th.
Okay. Tuesday's the 18th, so you're coming back. So the 20th may work for you,
The
Dan?
20
The 20th is a Thursday of June, so it's like the 2 days after you get back.
Yeah, I mean, you sure, check, I mean, otherwise, yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Thursday.
I'll start with that day and we'll take it from there.
Save, yeah, save Christine.
Um,
I won't be here, but
But you-
Okay. Well, we'll make sure that we have a quorum at least.
Yeah. Okay. Nothing.
What happened? You still there? I lost him.